95% of the people who hear the information you will hear in this video have developed a new habit. I don't think you will be in that small 5%. The habits we have in our daily lives can have much more impact on our lives than we realize. With the new knowledge and remarkable scientific research we will learn, how can we develop a new habit? We will discover this. The chain of habits that starts when we are young continues until the end of our lives, taking different forms in the later stages of our lives, even if there are breaks and ruptures from time to time. Imagine a newborn baby. She is introduced to breast milk, the first and most important source of nutrition. We all say a dramatic goodbye to our first habit, breast milk, when we are mature enough to start solid food. This is the story of how we all abandoned our first habit. After a brief glimpse into the past, I would like to ask the main responsibility without wasting too much time. Why do we develop habits? We can call habits an energy-saving mode that allows our brains to work with less energy consumption. Neurons are one of the most important things necessary for our brains to work stably in energy-saving mode. There is no set amount of time to develop a new habit from scratch. This varies from person to person and depending on the type of habit. But studies suggest that it takes about 21 days for a behavior to become a habit. But this is the average value. Neurons are cells that carry signals in the brain and nervous system. The connections between neurons take place in places called synapses. Neurons are units that carry and process information in the brain and nervous system. We can say that what we call habit is that these neurons in our brain come together and perform certain tasks faster. You have never ridden a bicycle in your life and you are about to attempt it for the first time. There is no record in our brain of the experience of riding a bicycle. You have adjusted the saddle of your bicycle according to your neck, you get on, you turn the first pedal. A lot of synaptic activity has taken place in your brain. In this process, the connections between a certain number of nerve cells in your brain are strengthened and new connections are formed. This process is related to learning and memory. When I experience the skill of cycling for the first time, my brain concentrates on the motor cortex region, where the communication between the nerve cells involved in cycling movements increases. A certain number of neurons are now grouped together in our brain under the name of cycling. Every day that we start cycling regularly, the relationships in these synapse groups are reinforced. For the first ride, your brain spent a lot of energy because it was experiencing something new, but now you can hop on any bike and go anywhere you want. The main reason for this is that as we do cycling activities in our brains, groups of neurons come together and can now act as a group very quickly without thinking about any cycling activity. So now you have a new hobby or a new habit. Of course, while rejoicing in our new habits, I would like to remind you this. We all have habits that are useful as well as useless or addictive. We can categorize habits under two main headings: good habits and bad habits. There are many different types of habits, such as daily routines, idiosyncratic behaviors, eating habits, decision-making, recreational activities. Good habits include eating a healthy diet, exercising regularly, and reading books. Bad habits include smoking, alcohol abuse, eating harmful snacks, and other popular habits. Eating is perhaps the activity we all enjoy the most. We have such a routine that even if we skip a game, our body warns us with some rumbling sounds. You are at work and every day at 17:45 o'clock, you eat a wafer. Every day around 17:45 o'clock, your body will do its best to make you eat that wafer. Don't just talk about food habits. In Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, people who developed the habit of eating popcorn at the movies were fed both fresh and stale popcorn, and it was observed that they did not make any objection to the stale corn. The same people were asked to eat the same corn, that is the stale ones, this time with the hands opposite to the hands they normally use, and the result is striking. This time they notice the stale corn. Here are some habits that can make us blind. So if you have a habit that you are uncomfortable doing, changing the conditions in which it occurs can help you to abandon that habit. If we go back to our urge to eat wafers at 17:45, we analyze these habits under the eating habit. But there is actually a point where all habits converge. When we want that wafer, we actually want our brain to release certain chemicals into our body. As a result of this secretion, we think that we will get that big reward. I can hear you asking what this big prize could be. Let me tell you without delay. The name of this reward is dopamine. Dopamine is a brain hormone and neurotransmitter. Dopamine is important for a variety of functions, but it is particularly related to emotions. When dopamine is released, people are generally pleasant, happy, and motivated. Because dopamine is associated with the reward system, when dopamine is released, there is an expectation of reward. This makes people more diligent, less anxious, and more focused. Activities such as exercise, eating, and games increase the release of dopamine. And it makes people feel pleasure when they do these activities. Now you know what dopamine is. But why do people get addicted to bad habits? For example, smoking. Why can't people give up smoking even though it smells bad, is harmful, and poisons not only the person inside, but also those around them? Actually, the reason is the same. Nicotine causes chemical and biological changes in the brain. It causes the release of dopamine. Dopamine gives the smoker pleasure, it increases concentration, it increases energy levels. This is the reinforcing effect of nicotine. In other words, people desire to smoke in order to achieve this effect. We can summarize this situation as follows. For people to feel good and be happy, their brains need to release dopamine. While there are relatively difficult ways to achieve this, the fact that you can access it quickly and easily with bad habits is the main reason why we have bad habits. Imagine you need dopamine. You feel exhausted, tired, and depressed. You have a chocolate bar in your drawer, you can open it and eat it. Or if you are a smoker, you can have another cigarette. The last option is to exercise for 15 or 20 minutes. In these three cases, you will release a similar amount of dopamine. Given these options, which do you think you are more likely to choose? Let me give you the first tip. I told you at the beginning of the video that our brain is very efficient at conserving energy. So I think it's very likely that the option of being happy in the shortest way would be the option that many people would choose. But if you say that habits are always divided into good and bad, at that point, I would like to invite you to that gray area between white and black. Right between good habits and bad habits, I would like to introduce you to habits that release a new dopamine. Maybe this habit is the most dangerous habit, but it seems to be the most innocent. I'm sure there are some of you who have guessed it by now. Our social media habits, or should I say our addiction. If you think that these famous social media companies have similar designs and flows by coincidence, you are well intentioned. Because they are all consciously developing user experience and features that make people psychologically comfortable. After spending minutes on social media platforms that you all enter with the plan of looking at something short and then leaving, oh, I was picking up my phone for something else. When did I end up on Instagram Discovery? I don't want to quit. Well, don't beat yourself up too much because these platforms are specially designed so that once you start using them, you won't quit. This streaming theme has a good name. Infinite loop. Infinite loop. It's almost impossible not to get lost in this loop. New and relevant content is shown to you every time you refresh. The algorithm working behind the scenes on these platforms analyzes what kind of content you like and makes content in similar categories ready for you in seconds as you pull up and refresh each infinite loop. Our brains both feel a pleasure in every renewal and easily obtain the content that they constantly like and like. It is worth noting this. Our body gets used to every dopamine release and needs a little more dopamine to get the same pleasure the next time. The dopamine that you used to get with one candy, you can now get with 2 candies. This makes us realize that our habit center actually works very close to the addiction center. Up to this point, we have all learned theoretical but important information such as why habits exist, what dopamine is, etc. It is very difficult to build something without knowing the current functioning of our body. Some of us may be thinking, give us a few fish, not more ties. In order not to send them away empty, we can talk about a few techniques. This is where the book Atomic Habits comes in. With this book, James Clear focused on making big improvements by taking small steps. I guess that's why it's called Atomic Habits. James Clear proves that if a person can be 1% better every day for a year, at the end of a year, they will be 37 times better. Conversely, if you get 1% worse every day for a year, your progress will be almost zero. The book focuses on 4 main pillars: cue, request, response, and reward. I am in favor of developing additional habits to existing habits and focusing on the cue and reward part. Let's go through the example. Emre has a hard time getting up in the morning because he plays online games with his friends until late at night. Every day, our character drinks a cup of filter coffee as soon as he gets up and starts his day that way. In fact, whether consciously or unconsciously, this is a habit. He has adopted coffee as his morning routine. It's not a straight habit. She wants to drink coffee because her body is so used to the chemicals that are released after the activity of drinking coffee that what looks like coffee addiction has developed into a substance addiction. Coffee contains a lot of caffeine. Caffeine blocks a substance in the body called adhesin, which prevents you from falling asleep. Caffeine also increases the body's production of stimulants such as neuroadrenaline and dopamine. This makes you more alert and active. It's dopamine all over again. How can Emre add a new habit to this habit he has already developed? Emre has been sitting in front of the computer for a long time and has been wanting to do sports for a long time because his body is not as flexible as it used to be. But he cannot find the time and energy to devote to it. What he needs to do is simple. Every day he needs to boil hot water for the coffee he prepares with a French press. The kettle takes about 1.5 minutes to heat the water. She now decides to do short stretches and simple sports exercises until the water boils. This may sound very simple. It should sound simple anyway. We aim to get 1% better every day. Thus, Emre will have developed a new one and a half-minute sports habit in addition to his current coffee drinking habit. We need to look at our lives again with this perspective. If we want to develop habits such as podcasts we want to listen to, sports movements, reading books, drawing pictures, we should start with analyzing our existing habits and look for ways to build new ones on them. If you are still watching this video, it means that you are making an effort to add something new to your life in every sense. 95% of the people who watch this video will develop a new habit, which I said at the beginning of the video is not based on scientific data. But let's not forget that the only thing a person needs to achieve what they want in any new thing is desire. And if you are still watching this till this minute, then you have enough desire and belief in it. No one and no book can really help us if we don't want something enough. If we want to change our habits, if we want to change the course of our lives, we can start with our thoughts.